Hi, welcome to episode 10.5 of Beginning Fabrication. So in episode 10 I did a bit of a shrink job on one of these inner guards on this Torana, that one. Ran out of gas, and then also I didn't film when I actually shrunk it because just habit. By the time I get everything set up and ready to go, I just go to work, so it just slipped my mind. But I've got a new bottle of gas because $18.90, so I'll put it in there and then we'll shrink this side. We've got a bit of crap to get out of the way first, so I'll get that sorted out and then we'll get to work. So see our lumps and bumps, a couple extra holes, again we'll get rid of that. Nice dent. So I'm just going to get the portioning valve out. I'll take these wiring clips out. Eventually I'll pull the booster and master cylinder out, but not today. It shouldn't be in the way. Get the guards off, so I've got some access to inside. I might even pull the wheel off. See how I feel. So I'll try and set it up so that I can tripod the camera a bit to be able to show you me actually shrinking it. So I'll get everything prepped and get into it. So hopefully the next time we see this it'll all be silver. And there we go, sand it up. I took all the brake lines out. I ended up popping the master cylinder off just so I had a bit more access to this lump. So the next step will be same as the other side, knock this piece out. A couple of things I'll just say when I do this kind of thing, like that's a big lump to shrink out, so it takes a little, like a few goes. That takes half an hour, but you know, you need to work it for a little while. And someone asked me if I use a wet rag to cool it and to shrink it in. For things like this where it's such a big shrink, I don't, just because when you do use a wet rag on hot metal it heat treats it, and you don't want to harden the steel when you're still trying to shrink it out, so I usually just let it air cool as I go. You can use a blower on the air compressor just to sort of blow air on it, but I find just letting it air cool is enough. If you're shrinking just like a wobble out of a door skin or a quarter panel, and you only need to shrink it a small amount, you can use a wet rag just to shrink it quickly, and on a big flimsy panel, heat treating it can work in your as an advantage. It can work in your favour, but in this regard I'm not going to do it. So it's just too much metal to want to shrink out to then make it harder metal at the same time, make it a different tensile. So I'll bash this out and then I'll try and rig this up on a tripod somehow where you can see what I'm doing. So I've just given that a quick beat out. Don't be rude. It doesn't really need to be too amazing at this stage because there's still so much shrinking to do with that lump. But just by having that beat out against the chassis lets you know, gives me an idea of where I want this to end up. So I usually start on the the peak, shrink it down a little bit, and then just sort of move about as I need to. So to knock this big piece out, I'll just use this. It's a fairly sizable ball peen hammer. And for the shrinking, I'm going to use the old rounded dolly from underneath, just as support, and then just this little hammer just to knock it in. So as I heat this area up, I'm going to hit on that, but I'm also going to be hitting around it, because that'll kind of gather the metal up and put it into that hot spot, if that makes sense. And then as I go back and forth from heating to hammering, you'll see that this big lump, which is pretty decent, will shrink. And someone asked me about my super duper tripod. It's one of them. It wasn't expensive, and then to mount my phone, I've just got a window mount phone holder taped onto the top of it because I'm super high tech. Alright, I'll get this phone mounted and we'll start shrinking. Okay, I think you can sort of see what's going on there. Normally I put the phone in with the front camera in the tripod because I can't see the screen, but I've only got a flash on the back camera, so if I disappear, it's just because I'm coming back to have a look on the screen to see if you can actually see what I'm doing. So, little burner. You don't have to get this red hot, you can shrink blue metal. But for this first one, because that's such a crisp line, I'm going to get it reasonably hot. And I'm going to go around like 180 degrees of that circle and just start rounding off that ridge. And that's the flame. A more direct flame would be good, but that's just what this thing came with. See, it's already on fire because it's got body demo underneath. So just be wary of that. It's starting to glow now. Let's put the fire out. Gloves, definitely want gloves. Now I'm just going to start getting things ready. I don't want to get it all hot and then have to go and find my tools. So that's pretty good. So dolly underneath. So I'm really not hitting that particularly hard. A lot of the time I'm just sort of flicking it, I don't know if you can see that, flicking it with my fingers. And with the dolly, you want to try and make sure that wherever the lump is, that you've got a gap. You don't want to flat tap it, you don't want to stretch it. You want to have it so it's got a gap under it, so as you're tapping this metal down, it's got somewhere to go. And then as this starts to get the shape I want it, this is going to become, I can't see if you can see me, this is going to become too flat. So what I'll do once this starts shrinking down more is I'm actually going to tip it on its side and use this valley to give that room to pull in. So I don't know if you can really see how much of that ridge is already gone, but it's come down a lot, even just with that first go and without hitting it hard at all. So I'll give it another lash. Actually, I'm going to stop you for a sec because, as usual, I need to blow my nose. Alright, And luckily it's, I don't know if you can see my breath. It's pretty crisp this morning, which is good because it means that this is cooling down nicely. So I'm just going to keep this in my hand purely for the sake of when I put this down, I can get to work quicker before it cools down too much. Pretty much just going to do the same thing again. I'm going to concentrate on that highest point and just keep rounding it off, and then we'll just start shrinking the whole area once it hasn't got that such an obvious high spot. Just move the heat around so that you keep it all nice and consistent. Again, dolly underneath. I'm just going to try and pull this out here. So just turned you off when I was pulling it out of the tripod. So even though it's still ugly, it's as ugly as I am, you can see even though it's still a lump, you remember how it looked before, it's a lot rounder now. And as for things like where it's really crinkled, look, even on the other side, you can see the crinkles. Oh, crikey. What did I do? Hang on a sec, I've done something. Bloody hell. Hang on. Okay, try again. You can sort of see in the metal, I think, like there, where it's creased. But it's probably, I don't know, half a millimetre deep by the time it's been hammered and dollied, so it's still going to need a tiny skim of filler to be practical. You could spend hours and hours file finishing it if you wanted to, but in my world it's just not worth it. So I'll put this back on the tripod and we'll keep going. And I think that's, I honestly can't see what's going on the screen, so sorry about that. So again, grab the heat, grab the dolly. I'm going to start coming up a little bit off the top of that bridge now as well. Just because even up here is too high. It doesn't need to be super red hot. Doesn't matter, you can see I've dinted it in a bit there. That doesn't matter either, because ideally you want to shrink it a little bit too much so you can then hammer and dolly it, stretch it out to a nicer shape. And it's a lot easier to stretch out a round shape like this than it is to shrink it into a neat shape, if that makes sense. That's if you can even hear me. Obviously where that hole is, it heats up a lot quicker than the areas away from the hole, so just mind you don't melt it. So you can see how much crap is collected on the dolly from being on fire. So when I'm doing that area, I'm pretty much holding the dolly on the other side of there just to support this top section, so as I'm tapping that in, it's not trying to push the metal or concave the metal down. I'm literally just holding that so that I can move this metal, and then when I come up here to do this top section, I've usually got the dolly sort of more near that hole again, because you don't want to stretch the metal by squeezing it in between the hammer and the dolly. Get this stuff off the dolly so it doesn't make it so easy to catch on fire again, and we'll go again. With a semi-red finish. Again, it doesn't matter how crusty it looks now, it's purely a case of getting a nice architecture, I guess, for want of a better word, so that you've got something to panel beat. Like even where I knocked out this brake indent was too low, so it was just a guide roughly to get an idea of what sort of curve I wanted, and it's starting to pull into a pretty decent curve now. So I'm going to come back through now and just shrink through some of this creased area, and then I'm going to come back and do the top. I know this is really boring to watch, but you guys asked for it, so sucks to be you. Come on, you monster. Yeah, that's it, right, yes. I assume you can see where it's red. So I'm not sure how long we've been going on this, probably, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes, I really don't know. See if I can take this out without turning it off again. Okay, I keep turning the camera off. So that just gives you a bit of a look at the profile now, and you come down in line with it. So it's starting to round off nicely, I think, considering we've only been at it for, 10 minutes or something. But the area, even though, try not to touch it, even though this part here was the most protruded area, it's actually the top section that's the hardest to reshape, because where that little peak was, even though that was only about 2 inches, it's spread out onto a bigger area into like a subtle kind of a mountain on the panel. So that needs to come in. Once this is sort of shaped, I can re-shrink a bit more on the top to pull that into shape. But I can also come forward and stretch some of this out to blend it in. So doing these curved areas is so much easier and possible to make look neat than doing, say, a big flat bonnet or a roof skin, trying to get that straight. because you're not going to notice. If you stretch this a little bit more than the factory did by a few mil or 3/16, depending on where you're watching from, you're not going to notice the difference from this side being that tiny bit more compound than on the other side. So it's just not something that you particularly need to worry about. So I'll concentrate a little bit more on this funny lumpy area, and then I'll do a little bit more on the top, and then I'll probably just give it a smack about with the hammer and dolly for a little while and see how it looks. But I'll keep filming, just even if I don't use all the footage, I'll keep filming it, and that way I can sort of show the whole process. Alright, and again I apologise if you can't really see what's happening, because I can't see the screen, so I don't really know where I'm at. Come on. Because these creases have gone in so far, I might actually knock a bit of this out, try and level out the steel, so I'll actually hit them out from the underside of the guard. I've been able to straighten out some of those creases. That's starting to look pretty decent now as far as how I'm worried about those creases. So now I'm actually quite happy with the shape too, so I'm just going to do an overall shrink now. And try and pull the metal into that hole, whatever that was, or the portioning valve was bolted. Don't be afraid to take a few stabs at it. Obviously I'm not being overly vicious with how hard I hit it, because if you hit it too hard you're just going to stretch it and undo your shrinking. And you can see as you're going, when it cools down so much that it's not shrinking. Okay, I'll just stop you for a sec. Okay, so it's coming in a lot further now. You can see it's pretty round and relatively consistent. The colouring of it makes it look weird. It kind of looks like this part here is sticking way out, but it's not. It's just discoloured strangely. So what I might do now is actually just bash it a little bit cold, just without the heat, because now I've got this shaped up better. I can hit the rest of this out, and that'll actually start to uniform out and look like it didn't used to have a massive bump in it. So I'll turn you off, and then I'll film me smacking this car with a hammer. Alright, so now we're just going to hit it with that from underneath. So hopefully you'll see this part start to come out. Don't worry about the little high spots, because to stretch it you want the high spots, because then I can go underneath with the dolly and the smaller hammer and kind of stretch it all even, if that makes sense. Yeah, it's actually not looking too bad. It's just almost 6 o'clock on a Sunday morning, so lucky me. And also, just by doing lots of small hits, even though it looks terrible for now, it just lets me know exactly where I'm at, because obviously I'm not looking at where I'm hitting from underneath, I'm looking at where I'm hitting from the top. And also, if you want to do, I actually want to stretch that part there out, so I'm just going to use the dolly as a hammer, because it's got a bigger and a flatter surface area. Crusty hat being in the way. Sometimes it's nice to see what I'm doing. I don't want this to be a half-hour long video just doing this, so I'll stop you again and start you again. So even though you can still see where the lumps and bumps were, and it does look quite terrible, I'm actually happy with how it's shrinking out. So I'm going to give that area there another shrink, just to flatten out those creases a bit. And then I think that's about all the heat it's going to need. I'll I'll weld up these little holes because that'll pull some of the extra metal out of the top as well. To fix up some of this area, it'll pull the whole thing reasonably easily because the holes are spread fairly evenly. Accidentally tried to turn the phone off then. And I'll weld up these other holes and then give the whole thing a bit of a smack. So I'll put you back on the tripod and give that area another hit and then start welding, I think. Alright. Grab my hot stick. Come on, thumbhead. I don't even give this another hit from underneath and use the dolly on top. I think that is good enough to start welding on now. I wonder if this will let me take it out without it turning off again. And I'll just turn it off. So that's where we're at. Reasonably rounder. And again, I don't care about the lumps and bumps because the welding is going to change shape of it anyway. So I'm going to weld it up now and then sand the welds up and just give it another little bit more of a tap around, and we'll have a look at it then. On the inside, it doesn't look real pretty. That's the inside. You can see where it's melted off the deadener. When I did my brother's old car, I didn't shrink these lumps out. I actually cut a line down the middle of that funny lump vertically, and then I cut two horizontal lines and then panel beaded it all into the shape this is now, and then just recut over my 3 lines to get all the excess off, and then butt welded it all back together. I'll chuck a photo of it, how it finished up now. So, alright, I'll go and get this welding done. So I've just been done a bit of welding and smacking it about a little bit. I've been using this, basically a bent file. So when you use it with the dolly underneath, slap it on the metal with the dolly completely behind it, so it squeezes the metal. Puts a funny texture on, but I'll keep going with it. I only did about a minute's worth, but it's a good way of evening out the surface, because the dolly's got a big contact area and this has a big contact area. A lot of your little imperfections just get sandwiched out, and with the file it sort of shrinks the metal in as well. I don't know what this is called, slapper. I was just calling you that, I've got no idea what this is called. So that's had a bit more of a smack around, a bit of a sand up. To be honest, I'm probably going to shrink it a little bit more, just there. Obviously it's got a little bit of a peak. I could stretch all this out, but it's going to be easier just to shrink that little bit more. But it's, we got 6:30 on Sunday morning, and I've got a few other things that I want to do down here before I go home, so I'm going to call that done for this little extra episode. Because when I go home I'll edit this together and try and get it out today. So that's both sides of the inner guards semi-smoothed out now. There you go. Sorry I didn't add the actual shrinking into the episode 10, but I forgot to film it. By the time I had everything ready to go, I just did it. And then I ran out of gas, so I did this for you. So hope that was helpful. And I know it's going to be boring to watch, but that's too bad. You asked for it, and you got it. Alright, cheers. Okay, that's it for episode 10.5. Working on that. So I've already recorded the next few episodes, so I hate to break it to you, but there's going to be more coming up in the future. So keep watching, and if there's anything else you want to see, let me know. Cheers. Thanks. Bye.